The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived.
Global boiling? The world is doomed, we've been told.
We're in the 6th mass extinction right now.
I only wish someone could have warned us about this apart from every scientist for the last 50 years.
Every scientist agreed. But here's the thing, they didn't. Well, yes, they agree that the climate's warming, climate changes, but scientists don't agree on the apocalyptic claims that activists and the media make.
Icebergs are melting, the coral reefs are dying, and no one is helping.
If we don't stop the sea level rising, millions of people will be in danger.
In this special climate edition, we'll debunk some of the more absurd climate myths, starting with
the great polar ice sheets, which are melting faster than many scientists had anticipated.
If global warming continues at the present rate, then the Arctic could already be ice-free by the summer of 2030.
That's myth one. The Arctic will soon be ice-free.
We don't have decades. We hardly have years.
These glaciers are on the brink, some already past the point of no return.
If the entire Greenland ice sheet was lost, sea levels would increase by 7 meters.
That's 22 feet. At just 6 feet, one storm surge could leave London underwater, says this BBC documentary. This could happen this century, they say. But is the ice really melting that fast? No.
As we exit ice ages, you should expect some ice melt, but it's not happening at nearly the catastrophic pace that they claim.
Heartland Research Fellow Linnea Lueken researches environmental threats. She points out that studies in Arctic sea ice don't show a catastrophic decline, although ice has melted.
It's really leveled off in recent years. A lot of the time when you are looking at these very alarming images, it seems like where'd all the ice go? There's no ice. There's all these walruses laying out on a stony beach. They should be on big icebergs. Well, it's because it's the summertime. And in the winter, it all comes right back to where it was before.
All of it?
In recent years, yeah, all of it.
For the past 20 years, it's been largely stable. And anyway, this is just sea ice, ice in the water, not the total amount of ice in the Arctic. Almost all the Arctic's ice is on land. And this is the trend line for that ice. You can barely see any decline.
Compared to the amount of ice that's in the Arctic, it is like a grain of sand on the beach. It is so minuscule compared to the amount of ice that's there that it doesn't even show up on a trend chart when you plot it.
It's so frustrating. Media keep interviewing experts who claim
we still see an ice-free Arctic by the middle of the century.
There is a 75% chance that the entire North Polar ice cap during some of the summer months could be completely ice-free within the next 5 to 7 years.
Well, those years have long passed. Nobody calls him on it.
They absolutely should be calling him on it. A lot of these kinds of claims are based on what computer models are projecting.
And they pick the ones that are alarmist.
Oh, absolutely. Well, those are the ones that generate headlines, right?
Here's another myth that generates headlines.
Arctic polar bears are facing near extinction by the end of the century.
Imagine your family disappearing. It's happening to polar bears right now.
That's myth two. Polar bears are going extinct.
This is the worst one. Polar bears have increased their populations.
Environmental groups ignore that increase to sucker you into giving them more of your money.
Don't give up on polar bears. Don't give up on threatened species. Your support can help Environmental Defense Fund save the polar bears.
These environmental groups are really being sleazy.
Absolutely, because the data is right there. It's not hard to find out that polar bears are fine. Finding some sick polar bear out there to take a picture of does not indicate the health of the species.
So polar bears aren't going extinct, but I'm told we might.
The UN is warning of mass extinctions and food shortages within this century. If global warming continues,
climate change could create a massive global food shortage.
That's myth three.
Our changing climate is already making it more difficult to produce food.
There is no claim less true.
Agricultural output keeps setting record highs.
Even amid the modest warming of the past 100+ years.
Extra carbon dioxide is good for food production.
Well, we inject CO2 into greenhouses for a reason. It's because it helps to fertilize plants for faster and better growth. And NASA data show that the Earth has significantly greened over the past couple of decades. And that NASA even attributes to increased carbon dioxide fertilization.
As the climate has warmed, the world experienced the biggest drop in hunger and malnutrition ever. But climate activists don't tell people that.
The United Nations says Madagascar is on the verge of experiencing the world's first climate crisis famine.
Climate crisis famine? No. Madagascar's problems are mostly caused by bad governance, corruption, cronyism, not climate change. But whenever there's a food shortage, or even when prices rise, the media blame climate change.
Food shortages driven by the effects of climate change. We're going to see starvation and famine on multiple continents at the same time.
When coffee prices rose, the New York Times blamed devastation climate change wrought in Honduras. But coffee production there is up 200%. The Times focused on a one-year decline.
It does not mean that there is a long-term climate issue if you have one bad year.
But the New York Times acts like it does.
They get egg on their face when you look at the historic data and you see they've been setting records for coffee production.
But they never apologize. They never say, oh, we got this wrong.
No, and even if they did have a retraction, the damage is already done.
Alarmist media and environmental groups never apologize. They keep predicting doom. And when they're wrong, they just move on to the next scare, like this one.
The western United States is now entering one of the worst droughts ever seen.
Here's myth 4.
Across the world, climate change is worsening droughts.
Droughts are absolutely not getting worse. The media loves to share stories when there is a major drought somewhere, some very specific location.
More of the Northeast is now under extreme drought conditions.
But here's the thing.
They will completely ignore previous years where there were record low amounts of drought.
Globally, there's been no increase in drought. And in the U.S., the EPA acknowledges the last 50 years have been wetter than average.
Drought was way worse in the 1930s.
It sure was. Then part of America was called the Dust Bowl.
The Dust Bowl belongs on the list of the top 3, 4, 5 environmental catastrophes in world history.
But somehow, silly people at NBC News blamed wildfires on drought caused by climate change.
Historic drought is the perfect fuel for these epic conditions. But it's climate change creating infernos larger than ever.
That's myth 5. Climate change makes wildfires larger than ever.
Definitely not larger than ever.
This graph shows the increase in the area burnt by fires in the US since 1983.
There's been a modest uptick since the 1980s, but the early 1980s also happened to be the lowest recorded wildfire years in U.S. wildfire history.
The alarmists like to start their comparisons during those record low years. This chart does make it look like wildfires are increasing. But go back just a little further and you see fires in the past burned much more. Still, it is warmer now, and that plays a part.
1 degree of change does not dry out all of the brush in California. The real driver of these issues is mostly going to come down to land management.
Bad land management. California restricts clear cutting, removing most trees in an area, and they don't let small fires burn.
This is the overgrowth that's been accumulating in these forests for the past century because people have been putting out fires instead of letting them burn the way they naturally used to.
So fires grow bigger and affect more people, not because of climate change, but because
there's more suburban sprawl, meaning there are more people out grilling and knocking their Weber over when they're trying to make hamburgers or whatever, and causing grass fires.
But what about climate change causing sea levels to rise?
Yet another bleak picture of what could happen in these United States if global leaders don't take action to stop climate change.
Global leaders, whoever they are, could stop climate change? It's so dumb it deserves a video by itself, but I'll limit this to just myth 6. Sea level rise will soon cause catastrophic damage.
This is what would happen to the sea level in Florida.
In 2004, The Guardian claimed a secret report says major European cities will be sunk beneath rising seas by 2020. Europe's still here. In the 80s, so-called experts predicted rising seas will completely cover the Maldives. But since then, the islands have grown. They're even building new airports. The sea level rise is real.
Sea level rise is absolutely occurring, but it's been slow. It's at about an inch a decade or a foot per century. There's no way that people wouldn't be able to adapt to it.
More than 100 million people already live below sea level because their countries did things like build dikes to hold water back. Holland did it years ago without the modern equipment we have now. Climate change may cause real problems, but we can adapt to them rather than get hysterical about myths.
Coral reefs are disappearing fast.
That's myth 7.
By 2100, many of the world's major reef systems may become barren boneyards.
They actually cooked, and that's because the temperatures this time around were so extreme.
The Great Barrier Reef is dying.
The Great Barrier Reef is doing fine. 2024 actually saw record coverage for the Great Barrier Reef.
Not vanishing?
Absolutely not. To the contrary, the Great Barrier Reef has seen expansion in recent years.
Coral did decline for a while, and alarmist scare stories predicted this. But this is what's actually happened.
It's not surprising at all. Corals thrive in tropical conditions.
As I research this, I'm embarrassed for my profession. They just pump nonsense out.
It drives me absolutely batty every time one of these claims is made, and all it takes is a quick Google search to pull up the publicly available data on any of these conditions.
If the good news is so obvious, why would they keep reporting bad news?
Good news doesn't grab headlines. It also doesn't gain research funding and grants.
They're out of business if they don't find a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
It's taken me many years reporting to realize that the scientists who gave me the most impactful quotes that make for great TV were often less accurate. It wasn't that they lied on purpose. It's just that the more you study a problem, the closer you are to it, the more you worry about it. And of course, if it isn't a problem, you don't get attention. If you want people to pay attention, you better scare them.
We don't have decades. We hardly have years.
That brings us to myth 8. The bee-pocalypse.
Something is killing America's bee population.
For years, the media have talked about
bee-pocalypse.
Bees dying off, disappearing.
All the news shows covered the disaster.
This might be one of the most interesting, disturbing, and puzzling stories to come along in a long time.
Famous actors are sold to the bee-pocalypse.
30% of the honeybees disappearing.
That could have a devastating impact on agriculture.
But wait, grocery stores still offer lots of food. Baseball games are stopped until a beekeeper removes bees. Even here in Manhattan, a beekeeper sells millions of bees. Yet the media say
bees are dying in droves.
Now, about 20 years ago, some American bees did die.
It's called colony collapse disorder.
Beekeepers would come back to their hives and they'd be gone. All the bees would be gone.
For several years, beekeepers lost lots of bees.
So this is what you call a dead hive?
Yep, empty box, no bees.
But beekeepers adjusted. They rebuilt the lost colonies by splitting hives.
Dividing colonies to make up new hives.
No one knows what caused colony collapse disorder, and after a few years, it diminished. Since then, there are 31% more bees in America. They could have just Googled bee population and they would have seen them going up.
Absolutely. It's farcical.
Science writer John Tierney runs the Genetic Literacy Project. It challenges scientific misinformation in the media.
We're not in any way facing an apocalypse involving bees. Things have never been better in terms of the numbers of bees globally.
The numbers go up, but their dying stories continued.
Bees are disappearing worldwide.
All you have to do is read the basic science on these issues, whether it's on the genetic literacy.
Nobody reads that.
They don't read that.
Look, more people are going to watch the video that says, you might starve.
Do you like to eat? The disappearance of honeybees could have a drastic effect on our nation's food supply,
which could lead to millions of people starving in the following years.
The media are so irresponsible. Time predicted a world without bees, even though this beekeeper who gave the magazine this bee for their photo shoot would have told them.
The bees will outlast you. They've been around since the Cretaceous period.
I don't remember seeing Time apologize for its cover.
Time has not apologized or even written a new article that puts this in science perspective. The New York Times, about 5 years later, had a cover story about the insect Armageddon, predicting catastrophe. We're losing insects around the world. We're not losing insects around the world.
Did the Times ever apologize for its magazine cover?
No, they skipped on to another crisis.
There's always a scare.
Catastrophe, exaggeration, that's what plays. That's what gets the clicks.
And if you read their entire stories,
they don't really have a lot of science. They don't have key scientists, entomologists, giving their opinions on this. What they have are the Environmental Working Group or Pesticide Action Network framing these issues.
They're disappearing. That's why Greenpeace set itself a challenge to put a stop to the deaths of thousands of bees.
The activists blame pesticides for that colony collapse disorder, even though other countries using the same pesticides had no colony collapse. But the facts don't matter. The moronic protests continued.
The government isn't doing enough to save the bee on all causes of bee decline, but particularly pesticides.
Even though bee numbers are at a record high, gullible politicians bought the scare, and some places banned the newest pesticides.
The European Union voted to suspend the use of neonicotinoids because of possible links to bee collapse.
That meant farmers often used older, more dangerous chemicals that do kill bees. The natural food people say, organic, you just don't have to have the chemicals. Buy organic and you don't get them.
They use chemicals extensively.
Wait, organic farmers use chemicals? Yes.
It's not like organic farmers can sprinkle organic fairy dust to get rid of insects and weeds.
Instead, they use natural chemicals.
An example is copper sulfate. It's one of the most toxic chemicals in the world. Organic chemicals, because they're not designed to be targeted, in many cases are far worse.
Sri Lanka's president listened to the activists and banned chemical pesticides and fertilizers. Suddenly, the same farms produced much less food.
They were forced to go organic overnight, and their production has plummeted.
Food prices rose 80%. People invaded the presidential mansion. The president fled the country, and the new government ended the crisis only by making chemical fertilizer legal again.
This attack on industrial chemicals is really a way for the environmental industry, and that's what it is, to go after what they call big ag, big corporations. It's really an anti-capitalist movement.
Hey, no GMOs.
The anti-capitalists oppose GMOs, genetically modified organisms. Environmental activists persuaded most European countries to basically ban growing GMO crops. But genetic modification allows farmers to grow more food on less land. It creates plants more resistant to disease and insects, allowing farmers to use fewer pesticides. GMOs benefit everyone, especially poor people. Scientists in Bangladesh invented a better GMO eggplant.
That's decreased the use of chemicals by 85%, allowing the women and children who are doing most of the farming to live a much more viable life. So we really have to be smart about these things. We're not
not being smart, though.
No, we're following an outdated 40-year-old environmental script that just doesn't work in this technologically innovative world. They are outdated, and they are hurting the very people, especially the developing world, that they claim to want to help.
Climate activists hurt people in so many ways. Here's another that might surprise you. Do you recycle?
For sure, absolutely.
Absolutely, everything I possibly can.
For decades, we've been told.
Recycle America, don't just throw it all away.
Because recycling will save the planet.
You're saving the earth!
And that's what people believe.
We have to do it for the kids, for the next generation.
This will all be back on the shelf as a cracker or cereal box in about 4 to 5 weeks.
This recycling company is run by Lynn Hoffman.
If we're not using recycled paper and cardboard, we're cutting down more trees.
Recycling paper and cardboard does save trees. Recycling aluminum does save energy. But most of the other stuff is impractical to recycle.
That's right.
This is material that came in to the recycling facility from people's recycling carts and is going to leave as trash.
Huge amounts of what people send to her recycling plant will never be recycled. The worst is plastic, which for years has been marked with the recycling symbol.
We see stuff like this all the time. Recycling arrows on it, please recycle. It's not recyclable.
Even worse, plastic bags clog the recycling machines.
You have to climb in for a couple hours every day and cut them out with the box cutter.
But people think most of our plastic is recycled.
Yeah, I do think so. Is it not? You're gonna tell me it's not? That's the trick?
The reality is that
the amount of plastic actually recycled is around 5%.
Wow. I figured there was something coming, but I'm shocked right now. I didn't know.
It's sad.
all my life, I've heard about how important it is to recycle.
It's not.
Science writer John Tierney debunked recycling claims years ago. His New York Times Magazine story, Recycling is Garbage, set a record for Times hate mail. And yet, what you said is still true?
It's even more true today. In fact, the economics have just gotten worse.
Now, my city would save more than $300 million a year if it just stopped recycling.
Recycling is an industry that's using increasingly expensive labor to produce materials that are worth less and less.
Because it's not worth recycling here, much is shipped overseas to countries like Malaysia, where it's just piled up.
A vast field of plastic 2 stories high.
Some of it from America.
See if we can look on the back here. Marysville, Ohio. Look, Walmart bag.
They just dump here and then they burn it.
That pollutes even more. And what they don't burn, they sometimes dump in the ocean.
1 garbage truck of plastic is dumped in the sea every minute.
Barely any of that plastic comes from American shores. So,
if you care about saving Flipper, you should put your plastic bottle in the garbage.
The garbage? But then it would go to a landfill. And aren't we running out of space for landfills?
I'm sure we are.
People believe that because for years the media said,
we've about run out of places to throw away our throwaways.
They think that because years ago there was so much publicity about this barge.
A symbol of this country's growing problems with trash.
The barge traveled thousands of miles looking for a place to dump its load. But it wasn't because there wasn't room. States turned this barge away because alarmist media scared people about what it contained.
There could be infectious waste.
Dripping brown ooze of possibly infectious material.
We don't know what kind of tropical vermin is in that garbage.
The EPA later found it was normal garbage. And landfills had plenty of room for it. Today they have more space than we'll ever need.
If you think of the United States as a football field, all the garbage that we will generate in the next 1,000 years would fit inside a tiny fraction of the 1-inch line.
Really? Oh, that's surprising.
On top of that, today's landfills are not the polluters they once were. Some sensible regulations make sure they don't pollute. Eventually, landfills are turned into ski hills, parks, and golf courses. Putting garbage here is much cheaper than recycling. So why do towns keep pushing recycling?
They do it because people demand it. It's a sacrament of the green religion.
I rinse my cans, I take my labels off. If there's plastic on something that's paper, I take the plastic piece off of it.
That's fine if they want to do it voluntarily, but we shouldn't mandate that. It's not my religion. I don't want to perform that sacrament.
I don't want to either. It's time-consuming and complicated. My city orders us follow all these rules.
And that's one of the reasons recycling fails is because it's so complicated, people never learn the rules, and why should they be spending their free time learning these rules?
Worse, lots of what we do is pointless.
If you rinse a plastic bottle in hot water, the net result is more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than if you threw it in the garbage.
Even Greenpeace said most plastic simply cannot be recycled. So what's Greenpeace's solution?
Let's stop producing it.
You're saying don't use plastic at all. Ban plastic.
I think that's where we're headed.
No more plastic? But plastic often creates less emissions than alternatives. Environmental groups rarely mention that, or how they misled us about recycling for years.
It's appalling that after telling people for 3 decades to recycle, they don't even apologize for all the time and money that they've wasted. Instead, they have an even worse proposal that will make life even worse and will be even more expensive.
One time-consuming dream of theirs is a circular economy where everything is reused.
If you're running out of laundry detergent, you could take your jug back to the store and fill it up instead of buying another one. That's really the goal.
But people don't want to. You're asking them to do things they don't want to do.
People also don't want insurance rates going up because of catastrophic weather.
Catastrophic weather increases because someone doesn't recycle?
Sure, because of climate change.
Give me a break. Recycling's no climate savior. When Los Angeles mandated recycling, they added 400 polluting garbage trucks. But environmentalists still demand we pick through our trash, switch from plastic to paper bags that rip. California even banned small plastic shampoo bottles. These little things here.
Why do you want to make life more difficult for travelers? Some of these rules are just so arbitrary and silly. It's simply a way, I think, for Greens and for some politicians to pretend that they're saving the planet. And it's
to
just
feel
absurd.
good. It feels like they're doing something.
Right, and I think they get a charge out of telling people what to do.
Finally, for our last segment in this compilation, let's talk motive.
Climate change. We are seeing the impacts more and more each day.
Why do climate activists make obviously false claims about dying species?
They are facing extinction in this century.
Why, when they must know better, do environmental groups still push scares that have been debunked?
Why is it so important to donate to this fundraiser for Greenpeace?
Because they want your money.
Your gift will help NRDC come to the defense of polar bears.
These scares drive donations. They always feel that the only way they can talk about environmental issues is to frame it with hysteria, crisis.
But they're not trying to trick people. They believe it.
Sometimes they believe it, but they also recognize that hysteria generates donations. And the oxygen for these organizations is money donated by people who think they're doing good.
So you give billions to these groups.
Insufficient attention has been paid to following the money. The environmental industrial complex actually has more money in the PR game, in the lobbying game, than the real industry.
The media portray the activists as plucky underdogs, the little guy, but they're not. Greenpeace pulls in more than $400 million a year, and they want more.
Our fundraisers are doing street or door fundraising.
They pay young people to accost you.
Even if it's only 2 or 3 people each day, knowing that they're going to be giving to Greenpeace for a hell of a long time.
Some of your millions in donations to the World Wildlife Fund help pay for its 250,000 square foot headquarters with, as they proudly put it, a stunning 8-story skylit atrium. They call this wise use of donated funds.
Support WWF's global conservation work. That's just 40 cents a day.
The Natural Resources Defense Council spends some of your millions on galas with fashion brands and celebrities who also make ads for them.
This is our moment.
Give to the Sierra Club and you can attend their lavish ball here. The so-called environmentalists are now the big guys rolling in money. It's bad enough that they lie to us and get paid. Worse is the damage they do. They block progress.
They have billions of dollars to do not build a thing, but just to oppose building things.
We sued the Trump administration on average once every 10 days for 4 straight years.
There's a rich sense of irony there.
Irony, because while they say they'll save the bees,
ultimately that donation goes to a lawyer suing someone, preventing you from using gasoline.
Some of your money does go to people cleaning parks or rivers, but groups like the NRDC and Sierra Club spend millions more on lawsuits.
In the past year, our legal team has stopped thousands of miles of fossil fuel pipelines and dozens of large power plants.
We have the Sierra Club, active in every state, actively suing.
The natural gas pipeline that was supposed to span 3 states has been canceled. Environmentalists sued to stop it.
They sue to stop nuclear power. They even oppose solar projects and wind farms.
It's that apparatus that's keeping us from building.
It used to be NIMBY, not in my backyard. Now it's banana.
Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. And unfortunately, what that means is we don't get the lifestyle that we want. If you wanted to build a new house, for example, what kind of permits do you have to get? Who do you have to talk to? Is the Sierra Club going to sue you for building the wrong thing?
I'm ashamed that I once fell for their scams. Years ago, my TV station ran ads promoting my alarmist environmental reporting. Now I realize that what today's big environmental groups mostly do is stop progress and make lawyers richer. We invited the groups to come here and explain to me why I'm wrong. Defend your work. Not one would agree. I still want to ask them how they justify making it so hard for people to build anything.
It's a shame because really, when I think about what America could be, what we could be building, we could be so prosperous, so much more prosperous than we are.
I hope you enjoyed this special edition compilation. We'll keep debunking the media's and activists' false claims. To help us, click that button.